Well, it's the end of the month and I'm going through my messages and I found out that I had a problem with my metrics. If you have a problem with your metrics, the end of the month is the time to look at what you're doing so you can change course. So let's take a look. Let's go. So this morning I wake up to a nice little love note from eBay, and in my messages I get a notice that's stating that I have a high not as described for my metrics in January of 2020. Now that's not entirely true. It's really over the last 3 months where I have a high not as described return rate for one category. And so I want to kind of show you what you should be doing. Take time, learn from my mistake. Take time to go through your metrics and make sure that you are not close to the very high plateau. High and below is fine. High is sort of a danger zone, but very high can put you into a situation where you're paying 4% more in fees for that particular type of item. So come on, let me show you what I'm talking about here. So as you can see this email here, it's basically saying that compared to other sellers in my niche, okay, that sell the same type of items that I do, that between October 1st and the end of the year, end of Q4, this one category, and it's computers, tablets, and networking, shows a very high return rate. So now I get returns. I deal with pallets of liquidation customer returns, right? So customer returns, again, could be anything from brand new to just not even working, right? And so it's our job when we're sourcing, once we receive these items, before we even dream about putting these items up on eBay, that we're checking each item to make sure that there's no problems with the item. But we get so many items that we have to list, and it's like a revolving door with these items. We don't want to spend all day testing, a tablet. For instance, I sell a lot of tablets in the computer, tablets and networking. And you don't want to spend all day just checking out your items. Okay, that's time you're not listing, your time you're not sourcing, time you're not shipping. So you want to limit that amount of time. You want to get the item tested and go through all your items that you receive and just get them tested. So we basically just turn the item on, make sure everything powers on these tablets, and that sort of thing. So we had some returns on tablets, but what I found is, and I'm going to show you here in a minute, we had a higher rate of return on another item that I didn't even realize was in this category. But so as you can see here, you may or may not have an email like this. If you're not sure, check your messages, because they just delivered these today, the 29th of January 2020. And you usually will get them near the end of the month, the first month after the end of the quarter. As you can see here, the service metrics dashboard, that's where you want to be, and you'll click on that. Now to get there, simply go to your seller hub, go to performance, and then you go to the left side, it'll show service metrics. Click on that and it'll give you the same screen that I'm dealing with right here. So as you can see here, I'm not so worried. There's two tabs, an item not as described and item not received. I am not so concerned about the item not received because I know my shipping metrics are just fine. I get them out on time, and I don't have really many problems, if at all, from people claiming they didn't get the item. So that doesn't concern me much. I'm still going to look at it, but that's not high for this example. We're going to focus on the item not as described. Now, I offer 30-day returns. I used to, beginning of last year up until about September, I offered the 30-day returns, free returns. Okay, so if a buyer bought an item and they just said, I don't like the color, I don't like the way it looks, just wasn't what I thought it was, they could have sent it back, and I had to pay, you know, $8, $9, $10 for the return shipping, and that was kind of cutting into my bottom line, and it was a lot of returns. So what I did was I still accepted the returns, the 30-day returns, because you want that for your seller protection, but I eliminated the free returns, and it's now seller only pays for the cost of the return if there is a problem with the item, you know, your item not as described and all that. But what I've noticed over the last quarter of doing this, and what I've heard from others, and what I've seen confirms that, is that buyers are creative, let's just say, okay, where they find ways to lie about the item so that they don't have to pay for return shipping. So fine, you're saying that there's a problem with the item. Okay, you're saying that the version number of the software isn't what you thought it was, what I told you it was, when you could have uploaded the newest version, right? Saying just whatever, the keyboard doesn't work. Well, the tablet didn't come with the keyboard, but yet I still accepted the return because you have 3 days. Now, even though you try to send a message to the buyer, you have that 3 days to accept the return. If you don't accept that return on the third day, that case is now escalated to eBay, and it will be closed in the buyer's favor. They'll get to keep the item, and they'll get to keep the money. You don't want that. So some of these I'm trying to communicate with the buyer within that limited time frame, and you're just not resolving anything. They don't get back to you, they don't see their messages. So you accept the return, right? You pay for the label, and it comes back. Item comes back, you check it out, and it's like, well, it works just fine. What are they talking about? There's been a number of issues I've had, but I give the refund anyway. Now, and I move on. If there's an item that's sent back to me, and let's say there's a missing part or a broken item, it just, they did something to the item, that's a little different. I am allowed with Top Rated Seller to deduct up to 50% of the refund, and eBay is going to allow me to make that judgment. Now, I won't always deduct 50%. I'll deduct, you know, whatever I feel it's worth. Sometimes, if you're missing accessories, I will deduct 50% because it's no longer in that same condition. It's now a incomplete set. So I am going to do that, regardless of what I end up selling that item for. So going back to this, as you can see, it's basically saying that my returns are generally high, but that's under the video games and consoles tab, right? So you do the drop down here, and you see that my computer, tablets, and networking is in red, and that's what is of concern here. Everything else may be high or lower, but that's not what they're telling me about. So you want to click on that. Anything you see in red, you definitely want to click on. And you see that I'm very high. 7.26 is really high. And it didn't make sense to me, and it seemed like, okay, 13 returns, not working or defective, missing parts, arrived damaged. That doesn't make sense. So how do you go in and verify this? Well, as you can see down the left, there's a download report button, or a little box. You want to click that box, and it'll give you a file here, and it's going to show you all the different transactions that fell under the high return for that period. Now, one thing you have to understand, part-timers, if you sell less than 400 items for that year, okay, in a given calendar year, that's January to December, you fall under one category. Any seller that sells 400 transactions on eBay for the entire calendar year or more, you're under a different set of standards. Now, for the part-timers who sell less than 400 items in a calendar year, you have a year to work with. So, let's say you have 13 returns like I do in this category. Well, you have a revolving calendar year for those to drop off. Okay, so what that means is, let's say in 2019, I have these 13 returns, and February 1, I have a return to February 1 of last year. That is, I have a return that's showing. What's going to happen is February 2nd, that's going to drop off. So it's a revolving calendar. And then, let's say I have another one March 15th. Well, March 16th, that one's going to drop off. So I'll have now 11 returns that are showing under that category. It's a little more challenging for you because us full-timers, or us, sellers that have at least 400 transactions in a year, we get judged every 3 months, every quarter. Okay, so ours fall off faster. So it's really important for you part-timers to try to get your sales up to over 400. I know that might require you to put in more work, but find a way. Okay, more listings usually means, you feed the beast. It usually ends up meaning more sales, right? So my plan for me is, as you can see back on this file, I have a number that should have dropped off by now, that for whatever reason is not being counted against that number. But, coming up here, I have a few in November, quite a few in November. And as you can see, though, I had a lot of Magic Jacks. And so I didn't realize, and for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a voice over IP. It's like having your home phone connected to your Wi-Fi to allow you to use a home telephone. And we received a batch of those. We fired them up, we tested them out, we saw that the computer actually recognized the device. But what we didn't see is, on a handful of these out of the 30 some odd, we had like about 7 or 8 that came back where the customer, before they returned the item, didn't deactivate it. So it kept the phone number assigned to them. And so now we're sending these devices out to these customers, and they're like, wait, it's not letting me set up my account, and it's already saying I have a phone number. Well, nobody wants a call for Jim Bob, in the middle of the night, and it's, for the guy who just returned this item. Unbeknownst to you, I think I have a clean phone number, and you really don't, right? So we got a lot of returns for that. And so instead of actually accepting the return, because it's a $20 item, I'd simply said, hey, you know what? I'm not going to spend the $6 or $7 to have you send it back to me. I don't want you to go through the trouble anyway. Keep the item. I'm giving you a refund. Now, I don't recommend you doing that normally, but when you're dealing with a low-cost item and you believe what the customer is telling you, it's probably in your best interest long-term to just go ahead and give them their money back, unless you can fix the problem, have them send it back, fix the problem, and then, resell it. But I'll let you decide what you want to do with your business. That's just what I do with mine. And I think it buys a lot of goodwill with the customer, and it sort of takes that tarnish of, you sold me a broken item, you're trying to scam me mentality that people might think. And instead they are, wow, this guy just gave my money back. He's not trying to scam me. Good review for you, or no negative. And that's what we want to avoid. Even though, as top-rated sellers, you can get the negative removed in most cases, we don't want to deal with that hassle. I'm talking an hour on the phone with eBay to get anything done nowadays. And trust me, I spend too much time on the phone with eBay. And like today, I spent an hour on the phone with this problem that we're dealing with. You don't want to waste your time talking to these people on the phone. Future video on that, and how to navigate through eBay's customer service, but I digress. So as you can see here, I have quite a few that they will drop off. But what you can do, click on orders under your Seller Hub and then returns. And once you get through that, you'll go down to close returns and replacements. And you can see this screen. This is all the different returns that, or most of the returns that you've had over the last 90 days. And it's a good idea, you know, to navigate through each one of these and just see what returns were sketchy, we'll just say, right? Ones where they sent back the wrong item. Items not as described as what they claimed, but it was working perfectly fine. Anything that, you know, looks like the customer tried to get around the return policy, you know, paying for the return label, you want to flag. And the way you do that is, you see where it says on the left side under action, where it says see details, you want to click on see details, and then it'll pop up the screen that the return was closed, or whatever the problem is. And then you'll see a link there that says report problem with buyer, and you want to click on that. And so you can say what was the problem. The buyer returned the wrong item. I didn't agree with the buyer's reason for return. I received the item back in a different condition. I didn't receive the item, or I couldn't work things out with the buyer. Now, for our purposes, we're going to select, you know, the buyer returned the wrong item. If, let's say, you sold a shirt, they sold you a different shirt, right? Or they returned a different shirt. I didn't agree with the buyer's reason. You know, they want to claim some sketchy reason why this item needs to be returned, and it sounds kind of fishy, but you accept the return, and your suspicions are fulfilled when you receive the item and it's working just perfectly, right? I received the item back in a different condition. You sent them a new item, they sent you one that's all banged up. So you have about 2,000 characters. You can go in here and type what is exactly the problem. Now, for me, I did this about 2 to 3 months after the fact. I just sort of realized this after talking to the reps, right? It doesn't look as compelling when you're reporting it 2 to 3 months later, right before it's about to drop off. It just doesn't have the same weight. It's a good idea when you accept a return, accept that return as you normally would. Fine, take their word that there's a problem. If they send back the item and you receive an item that's different than what they mentioned, go back in here and file a claim against the buyer, because it's going to help you when you go to dispute this return being on your metrics, so being counted against you. And had I done that back in October, November, I may have been able to get that number down and stay within the high category. Now what's going to happen is, over the next month, month and a half, any kind of time I sell a tablet, it's going to be an extra 4% on my fees. Thankfully, I've sourced where I don't really have tablets or computer components, and so I won't, over the next month, really be dealing with that. So it's not that big of a deal, thankfully, right? But if it's an item that I have replenishables and I have a lot of volume in, that 4% can really hurt you. So make sure you're checking your metrics at the end of every month is a good idea, just to kind of see what's falling off, and that way you're on top of your business. You know exactly where you need to be. You know, it's all about playing eBay's game, right? I'm one that feels that no matter how many little festivals they have out here for eBay Open, and they dance around and they, you know, yell and scream about how we appreciate our sellers, I'm under the feeling, just by my dealings with eBay over the last year, that they don't really care about the sellers as much as I'd like them to. And I wish that they would realize that us sellers are their bread and butter. Without us sellers, they don't have a business, right? So they need to do a better job of taking care of the sellers than just putting on a you know, a 1-week seminar out in Las Vegas, you know, prancing around telling all the sellers how much we appreciate you, when their actions don't back that up. And so I want to close this and just let you know that go check out some of my videos, okay? I'm doing this to sort of help the community. I've learned a lot over the last year, a lot of stuff that really isn't being delved into so much. Hopefully that I'm doing that here for you. Subscribe to my channel. I'm going to come out with more content, once or twice a week is my goal. And, subscribe, like, hit the notification bell, and comment below. If you have anything that you'd like for me to talk about, I certainly will do whatever I can. If I have some information on that, I'm not going to blow smoke. At the same time, if I have something that I can share with you, I'm gonna do it. So comment below. Tell me your comment, feedback. It's appreciated. And oh, by the way, before I go, make sure you're using your coupons. If you have a store, you should have a coupon, and you go to your subscriptions. There's I don't know exactly the link, but make sure you're using your coupon. I had a $25 coupon for my basic store, and I bought, I think, 32 or 36 rolls of this eBay tape, and it was only like $17 after taxes shipped. So that's awesome. Without any further ado, have a nice day, and we'll talk to you next time.